In the age when the gods walked the 9 worlds, and the stars bowed to their will, there was one whose light shone brighter than all, Baldr the Beloved, a prince of Asgard, fairest of face, purest of heart. Yet even the brightest flame casts a shadow, and from that shadow came a tale of sorrow, silence, and the turning of fate. Gather now by the fire, where truth is bound in tale and time stands still. Let us speak of Baldur's dreams, of the runes carved deep, and of the tears of gods and giants alike. Welcome, everyone, to the Hungry Heathen. I invite you now to join me around the fire as we read the tales of Baldur, the tales of his dreams and his story alike. Tonight we'll be reading from 2 books, the Poetic Edda and Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. The Poetic Edda will share the dreams of Baldur. The story written by Neil Gaiman will tell us the tale. Shall we begin? Baldur's Dreams. This particular story does not appear in the Codex Regius manuscript, but it does, however, appear in a manuscript titled AM 748, alongside several poems that do, however, occur in the Codex Regius, such as Heimskvita, which is one of our favorite stories, the theft of the hammer. It is also clearly linked with the Poetic Edda by its form and content, as in Völuspá. Odin awakens a dead witch and asks her for information. In this case, is the meaning of the worrisome dreams that his son Baldur is having about his own death. Once, all the gods met for a conference, all the goddesses met for a conference, and the mighty gods talked about why Baldur was having bad dreams. Odin stood up, that father of gods, and he saddled his horse Sleipnir. Then he rode down into hell till he saw the dog of hell, the dog with a bloody chest, and barked a long time as Odin passed. Odin rode on. The stones of the road rattled till he came to the high house of hell. Difficulty switching pages. Then Odin rode east of the door to hell, and there he found the grave of a witch. And then the battle god spoke a spell to her corpse, was forced to rise, and spoke, "Who is this man, unbeknownst to me, who has brought me back to loathsome life? I was buried in snow, pelted by rain, drowned in dew. I was dead a long time." Odin replied, "I am the road tamer, son of corpse tamer. Tell me the news from hell, and I'll tell you the news from above. Whose arrival are these benches draped with straw for? Why is the floor covered in gold?" The witch replied, "The mead is brewed for Baldur's arrival, a shield placed over the fresh brew. All the gods are in suspense. I was forced to speak, now I return to silence." Odin replied, "Don't go silent, witch. I want to ask you more till I understand everything, and I want to know more. Who will the killer of my son Baldur be? Who will steal the life of Odin's son?" The witch said, "Halter will bear the long spear that will kill him. He will be the killer of your son Baldur. He will steal the life of Odin's son." I was forced to speak. Now I return to silence. Odin said, "Don't go silent, witch. I want to ask you more until I understand everything, and I want to know more. Who will avenge Halter's crimes? Who will put Baldur's killer on the funeral pyre?" The witch said, "In halls to the west, Rind will give birth to your son Vali. He alone will avenge Baldur when he is only one night old. He will neither comb his hair nor wash his hands till he puts Baldur's killer on the pyre. I was forced to speak. Now I return to silence. Don't go silent, witch. I want to ask you more until I understand everything, and I want to know more. Who are the women who weep in longing, who throw their necklaces up into the sky? The witch said, You are not road tamer like I thought you were. No, you are Odin, the aged god. Odin said, You are neither a witch nor a wise woman. No, you are the mother of 3 monsters. To which the witch said, Ride home, Odin. Feel triumphant for now, but you will come for a second visit when Loki breaks free from his chains and Ragnarok comes to end everything. So ends the story of Baldur's Dreams. Now, we're going to take a minute to throw some more wood on the fire. And then we're going to move on to the story in Neil Gaiman's book, which is much more full story. It will tell the tale of Baldur's Dreams over again, but it tells the entire story of Baldur. We'll be right back. We move now to Neil Gaiman's story in the Norse mythology book. Admittedly, this story is based more off of the prose Edda, and that is more of a story than it is a poem, like in the poetic Edda. However, this tells the full tale of Baldur, from start to end, including his dreams. Let's begin. The death of Baldur. Nothing there is that does not love the sun. It gives us warmth and life. It melts the bitter snow and ice of winter. It makes plants grow and flowers bloom. It gives us the long summer evenings when the darkness never comes. It saves us from the bitter days of midwinter when the darkness is broken only for a handful of hours and the sun is cold and distant, like the pale eyes of a corpse. Baldur's face shone like the sun. He was so beautiful that he illuminated any place he entered. Baldur was Odin's second son. He was loved by his father and by all things. He was the wisest, the mildest, the most eloquent of all of the Aesir. He would pronounce judgment, and all would be impressed by his wisdom and his fairness. His home, the hall called Breidablik, was a place of joy, music, and knowledge. Baldur's wife was Nanna, and he loved her and only her. Their son, Forseti, was growing to become as wise a judge as his father. There's nothing wrong with Baldur's life or his world, save only one thing. Baldur had dreams. Baldur had bad dreams. He dreamed of worlds ending and of the sun and the moon being eaten by a wolf. He dreamt of pain, death, all without end. He dreamt of darkness, of being trapped. Brother slew brother in his dreams, and nobody could trust anyone else. In his dreams, a new age would come upon the world, an age of storm and of murder. Baldur would wake from these dreams in tears, troubled beyond all telling. Baldur went to the gods, and he told them of his nightmares. None of them knew what to make of his dreams, and they too were troubled, all but one of them. When Loki heard Baldur talk of his bad dreams, Loki smiled. Odin set out to find the cause of his son's dreams. He put on his gray cloak, his broad-brimmed hat, and when folk asked his name, he would say that his name was Wanderer's son, the son of a warrior. Nobody knew the answers to his questions, but they told him of a seer, a wise woman, who understood all dreams. She could help him, they said, but she was long dead. At the end of the world was a wise woman's grave. Beyond it to the east was the realm of the dead who had not died in battle, ruled over by Hel, Loki's daughter, born of the giantess Angrboda. Odin traveled east when he stopped when he reached the grave, the Allfather, the wisest of the Aesir, and he had given his eye for much more wisdom. He stood by the grave at the end of the world, and in that place he invoked the darkest of runes and called on old powers long forgotten. He burned things, said things, and he charmed and he demanded. The storm wind whipped his face, And then, when the wind died and a woman stood before him on the other side of the fire, her face in the shadows. It was a hard journey coming back from the dead, she told him. I've been buried here for such a long time. Rain and snow have fallen on me. I do not know you, man who raised me. What do they call you? Odin said, they call me Wanderer. Warrior was my father. Tell me the news from hell. The wise woman stared at him. Baldur is coming to us, she told him. We are brewing the mead for him. There will be despair in the world above, but in the world of the dead there will only be rejoicing. Odin asked her who would kill Baldur, and her answer shocked him. He asked who would avenge Baldur's death, and her answer puzzled him. He asked who would mourn Baldur, and she stared at him across her own grave as if she were seeing him for the first time. You are not Wanderer, she said. Her dead eyes flickered, and there was an expression on her face. You are Odin, who sacrificed himself to himself long ago. And you, Odin said, are no wise woman. You are she who was in life Angerboda, Loki's lover, mother to Hel, Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, into Fenris wolf, said Odin. The dead giantess smiled. Ride home, little Odin, she told him. Run away, run back to your hall. No one will come to see me now until my husband Loki escapes from his bonds and returns to me. And Ragnarok, the doom of the gods, tearing all asunder, approaches. And then there was nothing in that place but shadows. Odin left, his heart heavy and with much to think about. Even the gods cannot change destiny, and if he was to save Baldur, he would have to do it with cunning, and he would need help. There was one other thing the dead giantess said that had disturbed him. Why did she talk about Loki escaping his bonds, wondered Odin. Loki is not bound, he thought. Not yet. Odin kept his own counsel, but he told Frigg, his wife, mother of the gods, that Baldur's dreams were true, dreams that were those who meant their favorite son harm. Frigg thought practical as ever, she said, I do not believe it. I shall not believe it. There is nothing that despises the sun and the warmth and the life it brings the earth. And by the same token, there is nothing that hates my son Baldr the Beautiful. She then set out to ensure that this was so. She walked the earth and exacted an oath from each thing that she encountered never to harm Baldr the Beautiful. She spoke to fire and had promised it would not burn him. Water gave its oath never to drown him. Iron would not cut him, nor would any of the other metals. Stones promised never to bruise his skin. Frigg spoke to trees, beasts, birds, and to all things that creep, fly, and crawl, and each creature promised that its kind would never hurt Baldur. The trees agreed, each after its kind, oak, ash, pine, beech, birch, and fir, that their wood would never be used to hurt Baldur. She conjured diseases and spoke to them, and each of the diseases and infirmities that can hurt or wound a person agreed that it, too, would never touch Baldur. Nothing was too insignificant for Frigg to ask, save only the mistletoe. A creeping plant that lives on other trees, it seemed far too small and far too young. Too insignificant, and she passed it by. And then, when everything had sworn its oath to not harm her son, Frigg returned to Asgard. Baldur, she said, is safe. Nothing will hurt him. All of them doubted her, even Baldur. But Frigg picked up a stone and whipped it towards her son. The stone skipped around him. Baldur laughed with delight, and it was as if the sun had come out. The gods smiled, and then one by one they threw their weapons at Baldur. And each of them was astonished, amazed. Swords would not touch him. Spears would not pierce his flesh. All of the gods were relieved and happy. There were only two faces in Asgard that were not radiant with joy. Loki was neither smiling nor laughing. He watched the gods hack at Baldur with axes, with swords, or drop numerous rocks on Baldur to try and strike Baldur with huge knotted clubs, and laugh as the clubs and swords and rocks and axes all avoided Baldur or touched him like gentle feathers. Loki brooded and slipped away into the shadows. The other was Baldur's brother Hod, who was blind. What is happening? Asked blind Hother. Will somebody please tell me what is happening? But no one talked to Hother. He listened to the sound of merrymaking and joy and simply wished he could be a part of it. You must be very proud of your son, said a kindly woman to Frigg. Frigg did not recognize the woman, but the woman beamed and looked at Baldur, and Frigg was indeed proud of her son. Everybody loved him. But they won't hurt him. Won't they hurt him? The poor darling? Throwing things at him like that? If I were his mother, I would be afraid for my son. They will not hurt him, said Frigg. No weapon can hurt Baldur, no disease, no rock, tree. I have taken an oath from all of the things that can harm him. That's good, said the kindly woman. I'm pleased, but are you sure you did miss any of them? Not a one, said Frigg. All the trees, the only one I did not bother with was the mistletoe. It's a creeper that grows on the oak trees west of Valhalla, but it is too young and too small ever to do any harm. You could not make a club for mistletoe. My, said the kindly woman. Mistletoe, eh? Well, truth tell, I wouldn't have bothered with that either. Much too weedy. The kindly woman had begun to remind Frigg of someone, but before the goddess could think who it was, Tyr held up an enormous rock with his good left hand, held it above his head, and crashed it down on Baldur. It disintegrated into dust before it ever touched the shining god. When Frigg turned back to talk to the kindly woman, she was already gone, and Frigg thought no more about it. Not then. Loki, in his own form, traveled to the west of Valhalla. He stopped by a huge oak tree. Here and there, pendulous clumps of green mistletoe leaves and pale white berries hung from the oak, seeming even more insignificant when seen next to the grandeur of the oak. They grew directly out of the back of the oak tree. Loki examined the berries and the stems and the leaves. He thought about poisoning Baldur with mistletoe berries, but that seemed far too simple and straightforward. If he was going to do harm to Baldur, it was going to hurt as many people as it possibly could. Blind Halter stood to one side, listening to the merriment and shouts of joy and astonishment coming from the green. He sighed. Halter was strong, even if he was sightless. He was one of the strongest gods, and usually Baldur was good about making certain that he was included. This time, however, even Baldur had forgotten him. You look sad, said a familiar voice. It was Loki's voice. It's hard, Loki. Everyone is having such a good time. I hear them laughing, and Baldur, my beloved brother, he sounds so happy. I just wish I could be part of it. Ah, that is the easiest thing in the world to remedy, said Loki. Hother could not see the expression on his face, but Loki sounded so helpful, so friendly, and all the gods knew that Loki was clever. Hold out your hand. Halter did so. Loki put something into it, closed Halter's fingers around it. It's a little wooden dart I made. I will bring you close to Baldur. I will point you at him, and you shall throw it at him as hard as you can. Throw it with all of your might, and then all the gods will laugh, and Baldur will know that even his blind brother has taken part in his day of triumph. Loki walked Halter through the crowd of people, all toward the hubbub. Here, said Loki, this is a good place to stand. Now, when I tell you, throw the dart. It is only a little dart, said Halter wistfully. I wish I was throwing a spear or a rock. Ah, a little dart will do, said Loki. The tip of it is sharp enough. Now throw it here like I told you. A mighty cheer and a laugh. A club made of knotted thorn bush wood studded with sharp iron nails was swung by Thor into Baldur's face. The club skipped up and over his head at the last moment, and Thor looked as if he were dancing. It was very comical. Now, whispered Loki. Now, while they are all laughing. Halter threw the dart of mistletoe just as he had been told. He expected to hear cheers and laughter. However, nobody laughed. Nobody cheered. There was silence. He heard gasps and low muttering. Why is nobody cheering me? Asked Blind Halter. I threw a dart. It was neither big nor heavy, but you must have seen it. Baldur, my brother, why are you not laughing? He heard wailing then, high and keen and awful, and he knew the voice. It was his mother who wailed. Baldur, my son, oh, Baldur, my son, she wailed. It was then Halter knew his dart had hit home. How terrible, how sad, you have killed your brother, said Loki. But he did not sound sad. He did not sound sad at all. Baldur lay dead, pierced by the dart. The gods gathered, weeping, tearing at their garments. Odin said nothing, save only, no vengeance will be taken on Halter. Not yet. Not right now. Not at this time. We are in a place of holy peace. Frigg said, who among you wants to win my good graces by going to hell? Perhaps she will let Baldur return to this world. Even hell could not be so cruel as to keep him. She thought for a moment Hel was, after all, Loki's daughter. And we will offer her ransom to give us Baldur back. Is there one of you who is willing to travel to Hel's kingdom? You might not return. The gods, they all looked at each other, and then one of them raised his hand. This was Hermod, called the Nimble. Odin's attendant, the fastest and most daring of the young gods. I will go to hell. I will bring back Baldr the Beautiful. They brought forth Sleipnir, Odin's stallion, the 8-legged horse. Hermod mounted it and prepared to ride down, ever down to greet hell in her high hall, where only the dead shall go. As Hermod rode into darkness, the gods prepared Baldur's funeral. They took his corpse and they placed it on Hringbjorn, Baldur's ship. They wanted to launch the ship and burn it, but they could not move it from the shore. They all pushed and heaved, even Thor, but the ship sat on the shore, unmoving. Only Baldur was able to launch his ship, and now he was gone. The gods sent for Herokin, the giantess, who came to them riding on an enormous wolf with serpents for reins. She went to the prow of Baldur's ship, and she pushed as hard as she could. She launched the ship, but her push was so violent that the rollers the ship was on burst into flame. The earth shook, and the waves were terrifying. I ought to kill her, said Thor, still stinging from his own failure to launch the ship, as he grasped the handle of Mjolnir, his hammer. She shows disrespect. You'll do nothing of the kind, said the other gods. I'm not happy about any of this, said Thor. I'm going to kill somebody soon, just to relieve the tension. You'll see. Baldur's body was brought down the shingle, borne by 4 gods. 8 legs took him past the crowd assembled there. Odin was foremost in the crowd of mourners, his ravens on each shoulder, and behind him the Valkyries and the Aesir. There were frost giants, mountain giants, all at Baldur's funeral. There were even dwarfs, the cunning craftsmen from beneath the ground, for all things there were mourning the death of Baldur. Baldur's wife, Nanna, saw her husband's body carried past. She wailed so loudly that her heart gave out. She fell dead onto the shore. They carried her to the funeral pyre, and they placed her body beside Baldur's. Out of respect, Odin placed his arm ring Dropnir onto the pyre. This was the miraculous ring made for him by the dwarfs Brok and Atri, which every 9 days would drip 8 other rings of equal purity and beauty. Then Odin whispered a secret into Baldur's dead ear, and Odin whispered, none but he and Baldur will ever know. Baldur's horse, fully caparisoned, was ridden to the pyre, sacrificed there in order that it would be able to bear its master in the world to come. They lit the pyre. It burned, consuming the body of Baldur and the body of Nanna, and his horse and his possessions. Baldur's body flamed like the sun. Thor stood in front of the funeral pyre. He held Mjolnir high. I sanctify this pyre, he proclaimed, darting grumpy looks at the giantess Hrokin, who still did not, Thor feel, appeared to be properly respectful. Lit, one of the dwarves mistakenly walked in front of Thor to get a better view of the pyre, and Thor kicked him irritably into the middle of the flames, which made Thor feel slightly better. Made all the dwarves feel significantly worse. I don't like this, said Thor testily. I don't like any of it with one little bit. I hope Hermod the Nimble is sorting things out with Hel. The sooner Baldur comes back to life, the better it will be for all of us. Hermod the Nimble rode for 9 days and 9 nights without stopping. He rode deeper, and he rode through gathering darkness and gloom to twilight, to night, to pitch black, starless dark. All that he could not see in the darkness was something golden glinting far ahead of him. Closer he rode, and closer the light grew brighter. It was gold, and it was the thatch of the bridge across the Gjallar River, across which all who die must travel. He slowed Sleipnir to a walk, and they crossed the bridge, which swung and shook beneath them. What is your name? Asked a woman's voice. Who are your kin? What are you doing in the land of the dead? Hermod said nothing. He reached the far end of the bridge where the maiden stood. She was pale and very beautiful. She looked at him as if she had never seen anything like him before. Her name was Modgud. She guarded the bridge. Yesterday, enough dead men to fill 5 kingdoms crossed this bridge, but you alone caused it to shake more than they ever did. Though they were men and horses beyond all counting, I can see the red blood beneath your skin. You are not the color of the dead. They are gray, and green, and white, and blue. Your skin has life beneath it. Who are you? Why are you traveling to hell? I am Hermod, he told her. I am the son of Odin. I am riding to hell on Odin's horse in the hopes to find Baldur. Have you seen him? No one who saw him, she said, could ever forget it. Baldur the Beautiful crossed this bridge 9 days ago. He went to Hel's great hall. I thank you, said Hermod. That is where I also must go. It is downward and northward, she showed him. Always go down and keep traveling north. You will reach Hell's Gate. Hermod rode on. He rode northerly, and he followed the path down until he saw before him a huge high wall and the gates of hell, which were higher than the tallest tree. Then he dismounted from his horse, and he tightened the girth strap. He remounted, holding tight to the saddle. He urged Sleipnir faster and faster, and at the last it leapt a jump like no horse had made before or since. And he cleared the gates of hell and landed safely upon the other side in hell's domain, where no living person can ever go. Hermod rode to the great hall of the dead, dismounted, and walked inside. Baldur, his brother, was seated at the head of the table, at the seat of honor. Baldur was pale. His skin was the color of the world on a gray day when there is no sun. He sat and drank the mead of hell and ate her food. When he saw Hermod, he told him to sit beside him and spend the night with him at the table. On the other side of Baldur was Nanna, his wife, and next to her, and, well, not in the best of tempers, was the dwarf called Lit. In Hell's world, the sun never rises, and the day can never begin. Hermod looked across the hall, and he saw a woman of peculiar beauty. The right side of her body was the color of flesh, but the left-hand side of her body was dark and ruined, like that of a week-old corpse that you might find hanging from a tree in the forest or frozen into the snow. Hermod knew that this was Hel, Loki's daughter, whom the Allfather had set to rule over the lands of the dead. I have come for Baldur, said Hermod to Hel. Odin himself sent me. All things there are mourning him. You must give him back to us. Hel was impassive. One green-eyed stared at Hermod, and one sunk in dead eye as well. I am Hel, she said simply. The dead come to me when they do not return to the world above. Why? Why should I let Baldur go? All things mourn him. His death unites us all in misery. And from frost giant, dwarf, and elf, the animals mourn him, the trees, the gods, even the metals weep. The stones dream that brave Baldur will return to the lands that know the sun. Let him go. Hel said nothing. She watched Baldur with her mismatched eyes and then sighed. He is the most beautiful thing, and I think the best thing ever to come into my realm. But if it is truly as you say it is, if all things mourn Baldur, if all things love him, I will give him back to you. Hermod threw himself at her feet. That is noble of you. Thank you, great queen. She looked down at him. Get up, she said. I have not said I will give him back. This is your task, Hermod. Go and ask them, all the gods, all the giants, all the rocks, the plants, everything. If all things in the world weep for him and want him to return, I will give Baldur back to the Aesir. End the day. But if one creature will not cry or speak against him, then he stays with me forever. Hermod got to his feet. Baldur led him from the hall and gave Hermod Odin's ring, Draupnir, to return to Odin as evidence that Hermod had been to Hel. Nanna gave him a linen robe for Frigg and the golden rig for Fulla, Frigg's handmaiden. Lit just grimaced and made rude gestures. Hermod clambered back onto Sleipnir. This time, the gates of Hell were open for him, and he left. He retraced the steps, he crossed the bridge, and eventually he saw daylight once again. In Asgard, Hermod returned the arming Draupnir to Odin the Allfather and told him what had happened, and all that he had seen. While Hermod was in the underworld, Odin had had a son to replace Baldur, his son named Vali. Vali was a son of Odin and the goddess Rind. Before he was a day old, the baby found and slew Hother, so that Baldur's death was avenged. The Aesir sent messengers across the world. The messengers of the Aesir rode like the wind, and they asked each thing they encountered if it wept for Baldur, so that Baldur could be free of Hell's world. The women wept, the men, the children, the animals. Birds of the air wept for Baldur, as did the earth, the trees, stones, even the metals. Messengers encountered wept for Baldur in a way that cold iron sword will weep when you take it from the freezing cold into the sunlight and warmth. All things wept for Baldur. The messengers were returning from their mission, triumphant and overjoyed. Baldur would soon be back among the Aesir. They rested on a mountain, on a ledge beside a cave, and they ate their food and drank their mead, and they joked and they laughed. Who is that? Called a voice from inside the cave, and an elderly giantess came out. There was something vaguely familiar about her, but none of the messengers were entirely certain what it was. I am Thok, she said, which means gratitude. Why are you here? They replied, we have asked each thing in the world if it weeps for Baldur, who is dead. Beautiful Baldur, killed by his blind brother. For each of us misses Baldur, as we would miss the sun in the sky if it were never to shine again, and each of us weeps for him. The giantess scratched her nose, cleared her throat, and spat onto a rock. Old Thok won't weep for Baldur, she said bluntly. Alive or dead, old Odin's son brought me nothing but misery and aggravation. I'm glad he's gone. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Let hell keep him. She then shuffled back into the darkness of her cave and was lost to sight. The messengers returned to Asgard and told the gods what they had seen, and that they had failed in their mission. For there was one creature that did not weep for Baldur, that did not want him to return, an old giantess in a cave on a mountain. And by then they had also realized who old Thok reminded them of. She had moved and talked much like Loki, the son of Lefay. I expect it was really Loki in disguise, said Thor. Of course it was Loki. It's always Loki. Thor hefted his hammer Mjolnir and gathered a group of the gods to go looking for Loki to take their revenge, but the crafty troublemaker, he was nowhere to be seen. He was hiding, far from Asgard, hugging himself in glee at his own cleverness and waiting for the fuss to die away. So ends the tale of Baldur. Now, I have read a little bit about this, and there has been some interpretation about it. And there's a lot of questions regarding Loki as to whether or not Loki was in the wrong. And there's a lot of scholars that think that Loki did what he did to make it so that the gods couldn't, in fact, defy fate like they were trying to do. Because even the gods cannot escape death. Hell comes for all, including the Aesir, as we'll see in some later stories. But that was the death of Baldur, and one of the very first things to start Ragnarok. And so, the tale is told of Baldur the Bright, whose light touched all, struck down not by blade but by betrayal, yet even in death he kindles hope. Let this story linger in your spirit, like embers that refuse to die, for though shadows may fall, the light of Baldur endures in every dawn. Until next we gather round the hearth of tales, may your path be guided by wisdom, your strength drawn from the old songs, and your heart held by the gods. Farewell, until the next turning of the tale. This is The Hungry Heathen.